Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. A quick reminder to support the broadcast. The best way to do that is by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack, $5 or more a month, $50 or more a year. We do private weekly chats for subscribers only. I also put out at the end of every week, news headlines and commentary just for subscribers only. And sometimes we have past podcast guests come on and do live recorded calls only for paid subscribers. You can also support the Rebel transmission by buying me a coffee, sending pesos through donor box, Wise, subscribe to our locals or crypto, since I'm banned on Patreon and PayPal. And you can also purchase a consultation to chat with me about whatever you like, expatriation, geopolitics, or the meaning of life. And do check out my affiliates and leave a podcast review. Joining us for the first time is the market sniper, Francis Hunt. He's got 30 years of trading experience and is the originator of the HVF method, a unique technical approach to pattern trading all markets. Welcome to Geopolitics and Empire, Francis.
Delighted to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I've been following your work for a while, and it's finally great to have you on. And because this is your first time here, if you could just tell us briefly about to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us about the work that you do.
Yes, I've just had a very interesting guest on, and he's very fact-based, and he's driven by fundamentals, and we think it's very hard to get straightforward facts. We think the best chance you have at knowing what's going on is by seeing what people do with their money, not what they say about what you should be doing with their money, or your own money for that matter. And the way we do that is a technical analysis, which is looking at the charts. It's not what they say, it's what they do, is one of our strap lines. And you see what they do by examining the charts. Further to that, we recognize that patterns have a tendency to give on balance of probability-based outcomes technically. And that's where the hunt, which is me, the volatility, which we look for compressions in volatility, and the funneling of the price behavior often allows you that unique moment with a super expansive move very quick. So we look for fast moving breakouts with very tight risk. In other words, you can place a stop with moderate leverage and get a highly expansionary move in your favor. This leads to adding alpha to your general movement on the charts, and even allows you to position for investment in the best possible way. You just look obviously at the bigger time frame charts. We tend to be from 4 hour, daily, weekly. We're known for calling the oil crash at the same event that you have been at recently, and Acapulco, calling for single digits while it was $67. We've called the collapse of the euro to the Swiss franc twice. Many big macro trades in crypto as well, and particular alts. So technical analysis does give you clues. It'll never scream. There's no neon sign that says absolutely guaranteed this outcome. But it certainly gives you clues. And when you do 360-degree analysis, which is also what we do, we look at the dollar, we recognize its role in everything. We look at the debt markets, we look at crypto, we look at gold, we know which categories, what correlates with what. You can piece together a certain amount of the puzzle that even without having all the pieces of the puzzle, you have far bigger insight of what you're looking at than somebody who is just following newsletters and hoping that the facts and the data is being handed is 100% accurate.
And again, you're go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to say this, and I feel I must. We're three circles. The market sniper, which is the technical analysis of traditional markets, the crypto sniper, which is about the crypto market specifically, which we see playing a role as your future surveillance finance system, which means very statist eventually. And then the reset sniper, which understands that we are going through one of the most unique economic events that is case studies of the future for centuries to come. And many people going with traditional financial advice into these abnormal times are going to get absolutely T-boned in this car intersection by a massive truck. And the best way is to recognize that different rules apply in economic resets as we're about to go. And we haven't seen anything of the scale by nation in the entire planet, in fact, ever before. So new economic history is being written and you're part of it. And how do you position that you don't get hollowed out in a world where we're going to have an ever greater flattening of the middle to extreme, ridiculous extreme wealth and peasantry? And you need to make sure you're on the right side of that fence. So that's the whole buzz and strapline. Sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. These were some of my next questions. And again, your links are in the description so people can check out your services at your website and your YouTube channel as well, which is great. You know, you recently interviewed Tom Luongo. You know, he was I was one of the. He told me I was one of the first few to interview Tom back in the day, and you know he blew up. And you've had Gerald Celente on, who I've had on as well, and Bill Holter, who I've interviewed a couple times on my TNT radio show. And so we're in good company here. And so this what you just brought up, you know, this whole Great Reset project, the state of the economy. Pretty much everyone I have on says that it's toast. The whole system is toast. I've had on, you know, everyone from Peter Schiff to Jim Rogers to Mark Faber, and they've been talking about this for decades. And it just seems like we're now at the cliff's edge. And so, where are we? You know, what's going on? Why is this happening? Where are we going?
You have to start at the one key place that often retail is not encouraged to think about at all, and is the massive, massive chunk of ice that is below the waterline of this iceberg. And everybody looks above the waterline and sees the usual things: politics, left versus right, Trump versus Biden, et cetera, and all the points of distraction. The thing that kills you is the under part of the iceberg that is 85% bigger. That's what sinks your ship, because you don't see it, you don't realize it's far bigger, and you're already on it, even though you're looking at the top and it still looks half a mile away. And that key thing is we are in a major, major hyper debt extremity of proliferation that is going to lead to economic collapse, both first in the debt markets, followed by the associated effects on the FX markets. So they are a seesaw, and you can't have major movement in the one half of the seesaw and the other half of the seesaw stays flat while this one's bouncing around. And the unwinding of the debt markets is going to be one of the single biggest by scale. Don't forget, 1 trillion is being added every 100 days right now in the US. And it's not just an American thing we're in. That's why I say this is the biggest synchronized. And you've got to ask, is that coincidence that every nation state has failed to follow sound money principles and been encouraged to borrow on the beggar my neighbor, pay later basis? And I say no. So I am what they call a conspiracy theorist. I think there's synchronization. You've got to kiss the key leper to enter the leper colony, and then you get given this bottomless credit card until it suddenly matters. And we're getting to that point where it's suddenly starting to matter. And this is going to have huge, huge effects. And as I say, it starts with debt and currencies. It starts with deficits and accounting and a lot of things that many people see boring, but it knocks on through stock markets, which is a far smaller market cap than the currency and debt markets. It knocks on through Bitcoin, which is a tiny little market cap, and its role as a replacement. So why you should be engaged. Why did we have one of our 3 circles in our overlapping, where the key part is the subset that's in all 3? Why did we include crypto in it? You need to be engaged, but is it? We don't have any love or emotion to anything. With dispassionate empirical assessment for where the reset is meant to take us and what are the objectives of the people that are driving that. And that allows, you have to be in it, but don't love it. It's part and parcel of your new surveillance finance system. And that's why the crypto element comes in. So you have to be engaged, but dispassionate. And dispassionate analysis means remain in logical executive center. People should marry their wives, not their stocks, not their crypto altcoins, not even gold, which we're a big fan of at the moment, not anything. There will be a time to sell everything and to exchange it for other assets. There is cross valuation, which we do a lot of. So another part of our technical analysis, cross valuation. I'm going to be doing something really interesting about silver and how it's actually showing a higher correlation with copper in spells than gold, because silver's been lagging in the gold market a little bit. That'll go out. This is the 360-degree analysis where you have to look in terms of what's the key mover. We've also been behind calling for the yen weakness over the last 3-4 years and the Nikkei strength. And that's been a big theme now more recently and becoming kind of a crowded trade almost now. So this is our game. And I'm not sure I've answered your original question, but I know I've hopefully added a bunch of color.
Yeah, you brought up something that I think about a lot. This, Cobra Commander Klaus Schwab, a Great Reset. Maybe get your thoughts on this. The idea of there was a David Roger Webb, the Great Taking, and this neo-feudalism. You mentioned how they want to get rid of the middle class, and we're seeing this globally. They're using inflation. It's inflating away the middle class. I've talked to people in the U.S., here in Mexico, and Europe. Professionals who've done everything right. They cannot afford to buy a home. Everything's just getting so expensive, and we've seen this come from on high. The Great Reset talking points. You're going to eat the bugs. You're going to not eat. They're taking away meat. They're monopolizing control on infrastructure. Bill Gates is the biggest farm owner. He's eating into the railroad lines in North America, and so where do they want to? Where are we going then on this Great Reset train? What comes after this collapse?
You brought up a very important thing, and people need to realize that actually it's the statists versus the citizens. It's not you against China as an American, or a Mexican against, another Central American nation, or a European versus the Russians. This is a statist attack vector, and inflation is central bank derived. The core fulcrum of inflation is central bank. And the reason why they do that is because people aren't told it is a massive wealth enhancer for the billionaire class and a massive impoverisher of the middle, the working poor, and the extreme poor. And I will explain that because it's very important to realize. So every time you hear the word inflation, you need to think central banker destroying me fiscally. Because what it actually means is everything around you that you need on a day-to-day basis is going up. What it actually means is the benchmark that you've been given, that the central bank controls, the dollar, the peso, the South African rand, is being destroyed, so that your saved money in the bank is actually losing consistently value well beyond whatever piddly interest rate they may be paying you, is being destroyed. And you're ever having to earn more and larger amounts. And in real terms, you're actually still getting poorer because wage increases are significantly below the true inflation rate, which is not what your statist, who is controlling all the levers in the game, will be telling you. They have successfully put you on the wrong side of a compound interest equation, which is to slowly slow poison into your wrist or your arm, make you part of the impoverished many, whilst the asset-owning billionaires that borrow from banks at exceedingly cheap money, because they borrow in billions, they pay small interest that is well below the inflation rate, their debt gets deflated, they buy huge assets, manufacturing plants, get state-based contracts like Elon Musk for putting satellites into space, for NASA, like Microsoft and Amazon for hosting servers for the military industrial complex to take biometrics of you and I talking on Zoom, which is being scraped without our permission, etc. Voice recognition, every biometric technology, which is all part of setting up the surveillance finance grid, where you will be identifiable, tracked and traced, punished for social crimes, hate speech on Twitter, all forms of things, given social scores. If you think that's not coming from China at some point, you'll see the equivalent under some other name, an internationalized biometric. You're going to see tokenization of assets, which is the great Satan BlackRock, run by Larry Fink, who is actually very, very specifically high on tokenization, more than he is. He'll talk Bitcoin up, but let me tell you, it's the tokenization, which is the derivative proxy that will be inserted between you and your asset, right down to my microphone when I bought it, till eventually your car, your property will be registered on a blockchain, pre-packed, ready to sale at any point. So it is become a highly liquid capable asset. And anybody who says you've undervalued that property for purposes of your property taxes, thereby I am entitled by decree to execute a purchase at the price you claimed. And they have the power of proliferating their own tokens, which will be your new monkey on a greased pole coupon that they pay us all in, like milk coupons that they'll decree post this reset, and they will then end up owning all those assets and will be a rentier society inside of them. And all the attack vectors are being brought by a monopolist bunch of corporates that are in bed with the secret services, the state, and this is across the globe that it is happening. There's very difficult to play arbitrage with the system. And the best thing you can do is leave your country, be in a different country, because when you change plantation slave master, you get better terms in terms of taxation. We do this very efficiently, and we helped many do it through our partners. We don't do it ourselves, that we used ourselves. So everything we discuss are things that we've seen, responded to, and acted on ourselves, and then already helped others to achieve. And you should be paying very little corporation tax, right down to zero. And you should be paying very little personal tax if you've set up yourself correctly, because the taxation will be part of, remember, inflation is taxation from the underside up, the devaluation of your money. Your salary goes up, you get dragged into higher marginal tax bands. And the taxation, income tax and property taxes will come from the top down, until eventually you can't afford to be holding onto your own assets because the costs of carry are not met by any incomes. Your salary has lagged the cost of inflation, and you'll be a forced seller. And you mentioned this, that's why Bill Gates owns farmland. BlackRock owns tons of homes that they are buying all the time, and will become the largest landlord, rentier, owner of many people's homes, and will be turning you into a tenant, as I say. And everything is based on going from purchasing Word and Microsoft Office outright into a rentier of the product in a software as service hosted in a cloud. And they're applying this model and template to every single thing. And you will soon see NFTs applied to any high value items that you purchase, which will then have tokenization and will prove your ownership and where you live and your identity and everything else, so that that purchase by proxy can take place, and that immediately transfers the physical asset. They are also tokenizing nature itself. So if you think, well, I'm good with all that, I'm in this Uber crowd. Uber owns no cars. It's a taxi company. Airbnb owns no houses. It's also cool. I don't need to own anything. If you've been suckered by that mental programming, let me just tell you, you will be paying for access to nature in the future, and the tokenization process is going to end up assuming ownership to these oligopolies that are in the financialization of everything, the tokenization of everything. It should be greatly feared, and everybody should be pushing back against this draconian overreach agenda. So, I'm quite messianic about this. It is coming. It's 100% coming, and it's not good for you. It's difficult to stop, but you can position so that you come out a whole bunch wealthier yourself, while the majority are going to come out significantly poorer and left beholden on UBI, where the government will control you absolutely, because they are paying you your residual stipend income and feeding you the bugs, as you were referring.
So that was quite the black pill, or as one of my past guests, Legal Man from the Jones Plantation film calls, he says he's cyanide pilled, which I'm stealing that term. I'm also cyanide pilled. So it's a dark future, and I think you're full on, because this has been one of the top things I've been shouting about here on the podcast. I had way back in 2020, as COVID in 1984 was underway, I brought on the renowned Jewish historian Edwin Black, who he calls this the algorithm ghetto, right? They use social credit system, cyber gulag, digital concentration camp. I like his term algorithm ghetto. And this is exactly, you just outlined everything right there. And this is where we're headed. And it's a realistic assessment. As you said, it's not wishful thinking. I don't want it to happen, but this is what's happening. I've already had the DHS ban me from PayPal. I've been terminated on Patreon. People are being debanked. Now, I've met people, when I used to live in Kazakhstan, I've met Kazakhs who were blacklisted from flying on planes in Kazakhstan because of thought crime. And then they're forced to take like 60-hour train rides to get anywhere in that massive country. And so it's coming here. And as you say, there are things we can do to prepare. I do want to ask you about the dollar, status as the world reserve. People talk about, Peter Schiff's and others talk about its hyperinflation, de-dollarization. There's this debate. I've seen you on Twitter participate. There's, I think, is Brent Johnson, who follows me as well on Twitter, and Luke Groman, I think. Was it Luke banned Brent? I respect both. I mean, I talk to everyone, and I don't know exactly what's going on, and so I'm learning from all of you. And there's some people who say the dollar is going to remain strong, and others that it's going to crash. Your thoughts on the dollar?
So first of all, I love both those guys. I give Brent Johnson a whole bunch of crap because he doesn't seem, there just seems a slight misalignment, but actually he's an intelligent, smart guy. I'm actually quite fond of him. He gets a little bit grumpy. So our exchanges come across terse, but I'd pat him on the back with a big grin and shake his hand if I ever ran into a show to see him. But the reason I criticize, not just because of blatant trolling, the element with himself, and by the way, on Luke, he's an awesome Groman, I think it is, intelligent, smart guy, and I love having lots of opinions around me. And I don't hassle him either. I don't hassle him at all. I'm only hassling Brent. But the key thing that I noticed with Brent is that he's taken on the cloak a little bit. And this is where the angle that I'm chipping at, because when I see a misalign that I tend to want to chip, what's the real truth? What's your take? What are you really saying? Because the dollar milkshake theory says gold wins in the end. That should be a gold bug. That should be someone who's retweeting about gold at new highs, China buying a ton of gold, all of this. Those are not the tweet feed I see. The tweet feed is China bad, America awesome, dollar awesome. And all of that. That sounds a little bit more dollar bug, even though the theory says gold wins in the end, and gold has made new highs against the dollar recently where it hadn't, but against all the other currencies, that shoe's now dropped. So surely the trade and the investment is the key element is gold and sound value. But when you follow a feed for a long time, you seem to just get a certain narrative that is being pushed that is actually dollar dominant. And as you've seen, we had a rising wedge into the dollar, and in fact, we called that, but we weren't perfect. We underestimated the crypto effect that it would have, because we've had dollar get a little bit weak, but Bitcoin was still really soft. Then it would rally again, and then Bitcoin was battling and it went soft and soft. Gold, however, unlike crypto, was continuing to stay in range, not coming off too much during the strong periods, and has surged to that new high and has been the ideal asset of choice. And we've always referred to this as the king and the god market of anti-fiats. And if your theory is gold wins in the end, there should be a lot more talking about gold and the percentage of holding. And the fact that dollar may, and I will say it's a good possibility. And, he opened my eyes to that. So I've taken something from him there. That it may have a spike when you have super surging rates, but this is not a positive spike. This is not a positive spike of, yes, I should be in that. This would be a blow-off spike as part of a death knell. That's like a dead man who's been shot through the lungs and heart, and you've crawled up to him late at night, and then you've been spooked. And I've actually had this physical experience, unfortunately, in the battlefield, that they stand up suddenly and shake around, and then they drop dead. And that's kind of spooky, that kind of strength. And that strength will be driven by the collapse in the debt market that causes a surge in interest rates. So I wouldn't be celebrating the dollar side of that short-lived surge when actually you're also celebrating the capitulation in the asset that is the debt, that is the other side of the seesaw. So nationalistically, as I tend to see from Brent. So, I mean, thanks for the question, but that's how it comes off. It comes a bit nation state. We're not nation state versus nation state. This is not China versus America. This isn't trying to highlight how dirty he is so that you're slightly a less dirty shirt in an already dirty laundry full of dirty shirts. This is statism against citizenry. That is the key attack vector. It's the layer above left versus right politics. And the technically interesting fact that the dollar could have a surge because its debt will collapse and have an interest rate spike, which will drive the currency higher for a spell, and an absolute collapse in debt, is not an ascendant moment for America. It's the beginning of that final death, nervous melt up before collapsing in a heap. And let me just say also, that doesn't mean I'm anti-American. I'm sitting in Miami. We're 55% YouTube follow American. I love American people. They're friendly. They're gracious. Their nation was captured just like all the other nations. We're talking about the controlling force inside America, and I criticize that, not the individual citizens. And most of them are deeply wishing for sound money, but they'll never get it. In the same way that old Europe never got it, Britain, the previous empire, never got it. We're just talking about America because it's the next major empire to be stripped, an asset stripped. And you've got this floating zeppelin called BlackRock and the likes of Vanguard of Wall Street that is hoovering up the assets and will turn it into an income stream and will go hover anywhere it wants in this globe when it's done, including listing its equities in other stock markets and, shape shifting into other realms. And my big argument is I don't want to see America asset stripped by the flyers of these oligarchical monopolist zeppelins that the state and politics have allowed and given unbelievable franchise. And let me be clear, they're doing it all over the world. Americans will be paying for the rebuilding of Ukraine, and the contracts will be awarded to the likes of BlackRock. When Argentina's debt was failing, instead of the government negotiating that, the expertise of BlackRock were involved, a private corporation. That's money lent, American money, American dollars that were proliferated, that diluted all you Americans' buying power. It was your money that went into a collapsing state, which shouldn't have been lent to in the first place. They should have done a proper crash and corrected and come up with sound money policies to restart. And you've got a private corporation that is being paid fees to negotiate terms that suit the private corporation, not your nation state. And that is the thing that I'm getting animated about. That is the thing I'm criticizing. I'm angry for the pickpocketing of the American citizens and the global citizen because the template is always the same. So I'm not an anti-American. I'm against the nationalization and the pride of being what you think is a least dirty shirt in the laundry. I'm sick of that saying. You're the dirtiest shirt in the laundry. Whenever you think you're the least dirty, or if you're no longer the good guy and you realized you're not the good guy, and I was in a war and I wasn't the good guy, you must usually expect you're on the wrong side. The West have thought they're the good guys. We're not the good guys. And you're not the least dirty shirt. You're probably the dirtiest with the hardest fall coming away. And I'm trying to warn people of that. And you need to take action to secure optionality that can give you other citizenships. And I loved what you said about your own profile, because you've been really active in that space, where you are paying tax and who's your master. At the end of an alt run, if we are blessed to get such a thing in the crypto market, I already have an exchange that works with a bank that I can sell off ramp into directly in the bank, already tested, totally cooperating, and for which there will be zero capital gains. Most people participating in the crypto sphere on any upside could lose untold amounts, and they could already. And I remind people, there was actually a story at 20K, December 20K, the tax year is fiscal. We had guys that then the Bitcoin then fell to 3K around August the following year. They received their capital gains from receiver at 20K. Once Bitcoin had now fallen to 3,600, 3,700, I think the absolute low was 3.2. They had to pay tax on the 20K at the mark-to-mark valuation, which happened to coincide with a high. Coincidence, maybe not. And that required them to sell all of their Bitcoin and to find other money. And when they pointed out that the asset is no longer valued that, they said, you will get a capital gains credit at the end of the following tax year for that. No more Bitcoin and a bill. And you had to find money. Now, tell me that isn't something to think about in a high beta asset class. And the same can occur in equities, gold, just maybe to a less amplifier effect. People are underprepared. What happens when you're running deficits the way we are? 1 trillion every 100 days in the US. What happens when nobody wants to buy the debt anymore? Just talking to a major macro strategist just before you, the thing Yellen has been doing is 75% of that new issuance. She's been putting on short-term notes. They're like bills. They're like 3 months, 6 months. We're talking sub a year. So all those will roll. So she's saving Biden because she doesn't want to push the long-term interest rate up by issuing a glut of long-term debt. So it's kind of like you have a credit card that allows you to pay something off for 1 year, 10-year, you have HP agreements on your car, and now you put it on a credit card that requires the full amount to be settled every 3 months. What happens is it's a poison pill election for Trump to win, which we're assuming he'll landslide his way in after recent events. And he's going to be, and he has to, he's promised to continue his tax benefit that expires in 2025. So he has to find another 4 trillion. Where do you think that's come? Well, he's going to tax imports, 60% on China and 10% from the rest of the world. And that's only going to raise 2.5 of the 4 trillion. Let me repeat, 4 trillion that he needs. And that's going to start a trade war, because everyone else is not going to allow you to take a tax on their thing without doing the same to you. Good luck if you're selling Fords anywhere outside of America. Good luck if for Apple. And the Eurozone wants a 15% capital tax standardization across the world, because the likes of the Magnificent Seven are paying fractions of 0%. That was calculated once that in the UK on all their sales, that Apple, through the double Dutch involving Ireland and Holland, that they were paying a fraction of 1% on all the income they got out of Britain. And it's the same for all the Mag 7s. That's why you have a stock market going up. The rest is down. The rest is down. The consumer's wrecked. The retail is wrecked. And they only hire less than 1 million people, all of those guys. So it's very, very narrow. All the big caps in total only hire 1 million people in a nation of 300 plus million that's just had 20 million new people that all want welfare coming in, being flown into New York. So the fiscal deficits are going to be so real. Trump coming into this environment versus Obama's tightening and austerity second term, where he had a cleaner run. They were at 3.2% debt to GDP. They're at 6.7%. This time in, Trump doesn't get to do tax cuts. Trump doesn't get to do all the pro-business things. That's why he's not promising that so much. His main pitch, if you listen, is immigration, closing the border and deportation. Imagine the PR when you start grabbing mothers from babies from breasts and loading them onto planes and throwing them out with a parachute on their back, or whatever you do, or detention centers before you repatriate them. Good luck with that. The Democrats are going to have heyday. You're going to have Alexander Cortez crying and wailing outside fences, holding their hands. You're going to have pantomime theater. The fiscal cliff is so big, it's a debt-based collapse. That's why the rates cannot be allowed to drop as far as everyone expected. We were supposed to have 7 cuts this year, which should have started the beginning of this year. Now we're seeing talk of the cuts, but nothing yet done. Euroland cut, Swiss even cut, which is a strong economy. America yet to cut. Who buys the debt? On the seesaw, who buys the debt? This is the big question. You want to cut everybody, and this is the fallacy. And I'm sorry, I'm going on, and I'll finish here. Central banks don't get to set the rates. Everybody thinks they do. They get to set rates when the market allows them and agrees with it. What happens is the market takes that decision away from you. Why did the British raise rates twice in one day during the Soros pound crisis? Because they were forced to. The market said, no, we're not buying your debt. We're not buying your pound. We're not doing. They had a currency and debt collapse during the Soros, and they had a microcosm similar event recently with a pension crisis in 2021. And America faces a big version of that. So rates go up because debt goes down. And that's the environment. So the cuts aren't going to come and nearly as long or as hard as people think. You may get 1 or 2, but you're going to have to put a very good narrative, because there's rolling debt all on short-term money that all needs to be re-rolled, plus a new 2 trillion of deficit spending. How does that work out? The whole story needs to be understood as debt. And people go, wow, it's dull. I want to talk about Apple and I want to talk about this. No, just let me make it a family. You're a family. You earn 100 grand and you're spending 250 grand, and you've done that for 30 years. And someone was stupid enough for you to put 150 grand on a personal loan for 30 years. And now it's no longer a personal loan for 30 years. You keep overspending by 150 grand. Now you're putting it on a personal loan for 10 years, 5 years, 1 year, 3 months. And it's coming back and needs repaid and you're running out of credit cards that are lending to you. That's where you're at as a family. How does that work out? Your shares, Francis Family Inc., go to bankruptcy court. That's how it truly works out. And that's where we are. And that's a fiscal fail of Francis's shares into zero. New system to come about. It's no longer in that. And that's where we are with reset.
If you could just expand a bit on what you mentioned earlier, you mentioned this controlling force, and I love the analogy of the zeppelin, and going, it's international, transnational, supranational, BlackRock, Vanguard, and that's the angle that I've explored. That I believe that there's this global force. It's not about nations anymore. It's basically all of our governments versus us, the population, and it's Russia, it's China, it's America, and so it's not East versus West. And we saw that with the pandemic, where all nations locked their citizens down. I was in Kazakhstan at the time, and it was literally dystopia. They gave us a card which said you can only leave the home every other day, and only to go to the pharmacy, bank, or supermarket. And there were police patrols and car patrols. It was total insanity. And so, just your further thought on where do you see is the HQ or the core nodes of control? Who is they for you? Have you contemplated that?
They have a grid system with hubs. So, for example, for a long time, and these are nations, these are areas or zones that are outside of any national law. Most people don't realize to enter the square mile in London, the Queen needs to ask permission. It's not her country. She has to ask permission to enter it. This is a separate legal entity. That is the financial hub and has been. That doesn't mean there aren't financial hubs in Switzerland, Singapore, and New York, obviously, and Beijing, and smaller versions all over. Johannesburg in South Africa, the capitals of every Latin America country. But that used to be the primary zone. And then you have the military equivalent is DC, District of Columbia. That is not part of the country of America. It has its own law and legal system. It's a corporation. It's a registered corporation. And we are corporation assets. They calculate the net present value of tax flows that you will provide in an accounting sense. And their goal is to put you on the wrong side of a compound interest equation and keep you running on that treadmill until you drop dead. And for you to have the shortest possible retirement and the longest productive for them, where you're generating inflows and you're a slave that has been made to work while never understanding that you were that slave, because technically you were free. You could get up and walk out and buy a coffee anytime you wanted. But actually, in the true sense, you were an asset of a corporation. So the control hub is everywhere. But I mean, Switzerland has a massive HQ of all the major Secret Service agencies. So the CIA will have a significant presence there, and it's a square flag nation. So there's a lot of signage. There's a lot of indications of what is unique and different. And Switzerland, as a square flag nation, is more like the Vatican, which is the sort of religious, faith-based similarity. It's not part of Italy either. It's another super small state. But boy, did they have a lot of money for being church and getting people to believe and tithe, give up 10%, because they try to extract tax, and they'd send somebody out in the fields to Naples and Tuscany, and he'd get beaten up and have his head cut off as a tax collector. That's how we should be responding. We do the work. You're doing nothing for us. How dare you come and say by some piece of paper you think we should be giving you money? Cut his head off. But when they got everyone to believe in religion, they could voluntarily, through suspicion and various other aspects, get people make an advance payment on their afterlife being good, out of fear and misunderstanding and the failure to cope with our own demise. I would almost argue the church was very powerful in the medieval era and before. So these are control structures through spirituality, and religion. And I would say you want to be spiritual, but you want to be cautious on the religion. Let's just say religion is for the poor, the middle classes are suspicious, and the government finds it a very useful tool. That is typically how it gets categorized. And a lot of things are being done in the name of godliness that are deeply ungodly. Anyway, so we digress. So that's your modus of control globally. And it is a transnational. And the key game is they try to push you into wrong framing. It's left versus right. But who are you with? Biden or Trump? or, it's China versus America. Whose side are you on? That's why they give you sports, red versus blue. I mean, I support Liverpool and the other half of the city is Everton in blue. Choose your color, red or blue. It's kind of everything is, they frame the choices. What about yellow? I choose gold, and neither of the above. I want sound money, and I don't want a government at all. I don't think they add value. And in fact, they quite clearly corrupted, weaponized, and actively working against my interests. So why do I want to pay for that? And that's our analogy. And we build wealth through seeing what they do in the charts and trading that. We just swung our crypto guys into Solana over the last 3 weeks. We were watching it for a month, 6 weeks. I put a free view YouTube out eventually a day or so ago, but our guys are in earlier. They're getting the best in, and it's up. It's outperforming Bitcoin. We've been a gold, and we say the way that wins is you've got to be investment in gold, and we also trade gold, generally, largely, mainly to the upside, not exclusively, but largely, and this has made new highs. So positioning for this crisis, we are winning in this game. We've been short the yen for 3 years. Now everybody's crowding it up. I listened to Druckenmiller say he doesn't know what the new trade would be in the new year at the end of 22, going into 23, and I'm like, hello, Nikkei long, yen short. So these guys won't tell you. I'm not saying I'm smarter than Druckenmiller. We've been saying that already for a year or two. He just probably won't tell you what he really thinks or what he's doing, because he doesn't have to anymore. He's just managing his own money, a home office. It's his own business what he does with his money. So either they don't want to tell you or they don't see what we see because they don't have the technical setups. But we had technical setups. I mean, it's worth showing you this one. The best trade actually has been sound money against unsound money. What is that trade? With your permission, I will show you one chart, a big time frame chart. If you can allow the share for me,
Go ahead.
it said disabled. I will show you this one chart. And this is literally, if you just did this one thing, you would have done so well. And that was a trade we called out absolute years ago. And that was the gold against the yen. I'm going to have to increase the time frame. I'm on 12. I'm going to drop it to weekly. Log scale it. I'm going to actually have to make it monthly because the chart is so small. So 2019, we said a major move is coming for the yen gold. We felt the yen was going to be super weak. This is when we started talking about yen weakness through the course of 2019. That breakout occurred for us on that candle. Monday, the 3rd of June. Well, I'm on a monthly, so that's the beginning of the month. It could have been anywhere during that month. June of 19. That was our breakout triggering event for a squeeze, an HVF setup. That's the same hunt volatility funnel you were talking about when you introduced me. And this was the trade of a lifetime. And it was the first of a major, because actually for a long period, through the 40s, 50s, 60s, the yen was one of the best currencies. It used to be 680 yen to the pound. It went all the way down to around 80, 90, I think at its worst, or 100. So the yen was the economic miracle. Japan's rebuilding post-war and their ability to make things better, of high quality. I mean, I'm in the States right now, JDP, Uniphase, top 2 cars for reliability, the Lexus and the Toyota. That's things people can relate it to. Number 1 and number 2 for not coming back with any problems. How many Americans drive a Camry? Not because it's the sexiest, but just you get no hassle with it. So this trade was the umpteen trade. You got in at 148. You could have, we normally get in a little early, but let's say you got in at the last moment at 149. You've hit a high. That's 149,000 yen. Now, that's not relatable to many of you because you don't understand the yen, but I'll tell you what it was roughly in dollars in a minute. And today you are 393 at the high. 149, so let's round it up to 150. So pretend it was like $1,500. It wasn't, but just pretend. This is now 400 at the high. So you've gone in a major trade. I'm talking about you can short as much yen as you like. This is a highly liquid market. There's no one who's restricted from this trade. And you can go long gold, as much gold as you like. And you've got regular setups all the way up. This is a huge, huge move. Of course, it was good against the dollar as well, but not as good. you could have just gone long gold against the dollar and sat with it. This is a trade that didn't stop giving. If you look at this move, you can appreciate it is literally parabola. Weakest currency that is can't drop rates because they've got too much debt about, supporting their debt market abnormally high, intervening to support their debt market. The other release valve, the currency on this expanding geyser, this hot water tank that's going to explode, they have to open in full to let the pressure out, and they keep adding more debt because they're spending more. Every nation spends more than it gets in. So the hot water tank is getting more and more pressure in it. You've got to let some of the pressure. They let the currency go, because if they let the rates go, the little mothers, the little grandmothers that have been buying from the Bank of Japan over all these years and supporting their expenditure, their pensions get destroyed. So let the currency go. Who do they care? Most of them live in Japan. They don't travel so much anymore. But there was a time they were the best dressed tourists with the best cameras in tour buses. So remember that. But the demographics have changed. A lot has changed. And here's one trade example for you that literally you could set and forget. We don't try to turn people into 9 screens, day traders, 14 hours of stress, sipping coffee and getting... No. If you aren't that way inclined, you're not about to become that way. Most of our people are in their 40s through to 55. We've got people right up to 70. We've got people in the mid-30s as well. But these are people that are managing their money, and predominantly male, but we're very glad to have the woman we do have. And this is one example of what you should have done. Shorting oil, longing gold. That was our trade, by the way, in Acapulco, which you mentioned when we were pre-chatting. It wasn't just short oil. It was long gold during that period. Gold snapped back from the CB19 event and flew to an all-time high. It was the biggest entire lockdown. It just threw cash at you when everyone else was suffering and was losing income and closing their business. Do you want to be the guy that's having the best days of your life and the best movements in your wealth when everyone else is being murdered? I felt bad, but listen, they made it a speculator's world. They created all these perversions. Am I bad for seeing it and sharing it with people that are in my community? That's a moral predicament. I give a lot away free, but I've got to look after the people that respect me first. And they get told first, they get studied first, they get in first. And then later, we release some of it to help people on YouTube. We just want to see other people not get crushed.
And speaking of getting crushed, I want to ask you real quick, your thoughts on war. It seems like we're, as you mentioned, the end of the system. A lot of people say war is used to reset the financial ledger. And the West is clearly in decline. I've seen you recently comment on that. I've been commenting on that for a decade here in the podcast. So the West is declining. Europe, US, you've got BRICS multipolarity. They're creating integrations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Belt Road, all this fancy stuff, gold backing. The gold is moving east. They're creating these digital interoperable currencies. And so thoughts on the rise of the East and what, war going forward? Are we going into a third world war?
So you're the best interviewer, because you just set me up so beautifully with your questions, and they're good questions. I stood in London when I was still based there in what's called the Master Investor Show. It's one of the biggest investor shows. It's in Earl's Court. And I stood on a big stage with a room full of people. And this was 2014, prior to the Ukraine flip. It could have been it could have been 13, 14. Might not be exact. And I said, one of your core best investment theses long term is to long your local military industrial complex and the international military industrial complex. And I called it, in my community, I'm afraid to say I use an F-bomb, but I call it the FU trade. That you have to hold your nose to put on. On this, I didn't use that phraseology publicly speaking in my 3-piece suit, but I said it's the hold your nose portfolio. And you had the Oligarchic Tech. At that point, NVIDIA wasn't part of the Magnificent Seven. It did exist, but it wasn't part of the Magnificent. But the Oligarchic Tech and the military industrial complex is the vampire squid, what people used to refer to as Goldman Sachs, is the vampire squid that is hoovering up all the wealth of the nation and all the tech, with the government as its biggest client. Even when citizens have stopped spending, they are. And that is owned by the black cube zeppelin that hovers over it in BlackRock. And I said military industrial complex. And the guy was saying even BAE, because we were in the London, which was a UK company. And I said, yes, even BAE, which is one of their major. And he said, but that's a terribly run business and they're wasting money and all of this. I can't agree with the statement. So I was challenged speaking, which is rare. That was in the Q&A at the end by someone who was an insider. And I said, you probably know much more about what's going on in the internal workings of this company. But I can tell you the wall of money that will paper over every single utter bureaucratic failure and crack is coming on a scale that you will see a massive multiple in a decade or so's time. We are actually a decade since that call. BAE is up about 8 or 9 times. And it's probably still a shambles run business. But when you have governments throwing hordes of cash that don't even have to balance their books on the basis of the tax income they get in, they're actually being encouraged to collapse the financial system by reissuing more debt. Who do you think has captured the dark state, the secret services and government? The military industrial complex is ahead of even the pharmaceutical industrial complex, which is itself very strong. The military industrial complex is the original vampire. The pharma industrial complex has been emerging as the backup, the queen vampire. The good old king vampire has always been bungs, arms deals, and it is absolutely crooked, bent, overpriced business that is enriching politicians and the insider cartel that are actively destroying. I use the phrase, and it's being copied a lot now, controlled demolition of the financial system. And I'm seeing people have taken on and run with this one. We're the first to do this. I drew a 9/11 comparison to what's going on. This is a controlled demolition. These actors, whether they do it knowingly or not, at the very top, they certainly know, have been planting the explosives to remove every solid concrete pillar of the financial system for its complete obliteration and collapse. And that's where you are, and you're sitting in that building. And I'm saying, get out. And people saying, you make me uncomfortable. It's air-conned in here, Francis. You make me uncomfortable by saying, leave my country. You make me uncomfortable by doing this. I don't like your message. And I'm like, out. The explosives are in. The guy with the plunger is already resting his foot on it and saying, just tell me when. And people are saying, I don't like your message. And I say, get optionality, get gold. Get out of debt, you're more likely to face the next major meaningful move in interest rates of some scale is likely to be part of the debt collapse, which is actually a spike. That doesn't mean you don't get some cuts potentially in an interim move if they do a huge disinflationary event. But long-term, the collapse of the debt markets is assured. It is a mathematical absolutism. Most of when I talk about the future, it's conjecture, it's on balance of probabilities, it's my take, it's this. Mathematics, you can't do this any much more. The game is close to being up.
And just another question or two. Again, do you think then, as you mentioned, the military-industrial complex, do you think then they'll escalate the conflict in Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Taiwan? I view those as multiple fronts of the same
yes.
sort of war.
So what's actually happening, we're in the final stages where the insiders know the hotel is the beautiful old, let's just say, Claridge's in London is about to be bankrupted. And the insiders already know. They're taking down all the valuable Winston Churchill pictures off the wall. They're stripping the gold off the lights. We are in that final stage where it's starting to become more obvious and the corruption is more overt. You get a blow-off in the corruption as last-minute people force the stampede of lemmings, which is the debt or the people that are not responding, into the bankruptcy. And it goes slowly at first and then very fast. So one of the things they absolutely will do to finish hammering the nail, the wooden stake into a really strong economic heart where people go and work and add value every day. It takes actually quite a lot to kill where people are contributing in such a way. They need to kill it with the debt. There will be final borrowings, wars, and the whole thing is pure corruption and theft. And it's citizen reduction. They will meet and say, well, how many am I killing of yours? As many as you can. Okay, great. And I'll kill as many of yours. And let's pretend fight on different TV channels, calling each other names and all of this. And it's just a citizenry cull. It's organ trafficking. It's children trafficking. It is money laundering. And it is the extraction of the military industrial complex and the banking cartel. The tertiary lenders and the military industrial complex own government. They own it and they want to strip it. There's no point leaving anything of value in there. So they will blow off on wars. I would think Trump will probably double down on Iran. Everyone says, oh, but he didn't do any wars last time, etc., etc. He escalated a trade war with China that's done immense damage. And the Biden administration has seized Russian assets, which has done even further damage to the SWIFT banking system. Everybody is now forced to develop alternatives. This is all controlled demolition explosions under the dollar that are beginning the wobbling building before the final big ones go and the central pillar and the lift shaft is taken. And that is not good. And that's why I say going back to Brent Johnson's tweet feed, we should not be talking in a national format and we should not be cheering the possibility of a dollar rally. Because the debt, and everyone goes, oh, and China's so indebted and their stock market's crashed. It's good that their stock market crashed because that means it got stopped being supported and it found a logical point where buyers came in. Markets that never crash are the problem. Debt that keeps being able to be piled on that never gets corrected are the problem. And when they do, they get it big. It's kind of like stacking up all your worst days, saying I only want good days. You have everything that's negative in a day rolled up and put on the last day of your life. Or the last week of your life. You know, what kind of week are you going to have? And you only have happy days and you get normal to it. That's kind of how we're doing. Markets should correct. There are exuberances. They should be allowed to find their value. So that's why I say don't get into that nationalistic thing. Don't celebrate a dollar spike on an interest rate surge that actually means your debt system as an asset class has just fallen. Since 2020, and I've done a blog post on this on my Substack with diagrams. If you'll allow me one more share and then I'll finish. We did a blog post on Substack about this, just illustrating. People are visual and it helps to see visually. This Substack revealed your visual guide. Go and grab the post and see these things because it just makes diagrams simple. If the dollar is going to be relatively strong, the US treasuries have to go down. This is China buying gold in white and selling treasuries plus devaluation of treasuries in red. Well, do you think they're going to be doubling down and buying the dip? This is what's happened to long-term treasuries. While the dollar has been strong, your high in the July of 2020 has lost 45% on your 30-year debt. That's an avalanche. And you don't stop an avalanche halfway down the hill, guys. You know what I mean? It's not something you put back in the bag. Everyone goes, no, actually, we should be buying debt. It's such an awesome asset. People have momentum. They've eaten nearly 50% capital loss. It's a terrible, terrible situation to be in. And you've had a 40-year bull market. The unwind of that bull market is going to be absolutely epic. And you haven't finished taking the elevator to the ground floor. Rates up, currency up, debt value down. Every time a tweet goes out celebrating a bit of dollar strength, you're highlighting a bit of loss of value in your debt market. And many people own that debt market and they ain't going to want to hold it anymore if it's a 4-5 year elevator shaft down. This is the yen. They chose the opposite. Rates stay low. Rates stay high. Value of treasury stay high. The fat guys on the currency side, the massive devaluation in the yen. That's almost a portfolio trade for us, and we still have it on, and we continue to put it on. And of course, the UK had their pensions crisis. These are images that are kind of helpful. How does it end? The water keeps filling up in the fishbowl. And eventually, even when you're super high, you can barely breathe, and the debt market is drowned. It's done. Surge in rates, dollar spike. And this is it. You're kind of getting the sun. This is astrological. I use images and analogies a lot. You picked up on that. The sun is burning out and taking the planets with it. That's the dollar in it. So it's kind of visual. By the way, and for those that talk about dollar hegemony and how awesome it's still the best currency and it's the most proliferated, and you know, I went to Latin America, it was the only currency that was taken, and all of this, convenience factors. Your dollar's lost 97% of its buying power since the Federal Reserve was created. So measuring it against a bunch of other currencies that are also losing 99, over the same period, 98 and 96%, and it's one of the better ones, not better than the Swiss franc, not better than the Singapore dollar, is not something to be celebrating. And your debt in the last 4 years has lost 45%. This is what's happening. The financial system, UBI, CBDCs are coming. We are deflating because the debt is deflating and crashing the value of assets, even equities. People don't understand why the stock market goes up because the dollar's going down. The dollar's going down. At least in the future, those earnings will be in higher dollars because prices are going up, everything. That's how you preserve some element of price power. But eventually it's so extreme, you end up in a situation that the only thing really saving value is gold when you take a true inflation rate into account. This is the way it's going. You can see the hyper fiat debt getting this bubble, this whole old system getting smaller. This one over here with all the different fish bowls of currencies and debt system, a big fat pipe going into your UBI CBD system for the oligarchs, much longer, smaller journey for us that all come in at the lower level, get the UBI, the tokenization. You've got to get out of that system and into metal, commodities, unencumbered land that are productive. You've got to get self-reliant. That's the option. And the octopus is still coming for that with its tokenization on nature and its buying of farms. They know what you're going to be doing. So this game is going. I love this meme. You know, people complaining about inflation on this. Let's just get it a bit bigger so everyone can read it. And me realizing that America has already been destroyed. These things are irretrievable, guys. You know, I could give you, it's the equivalent of me giving you the 747 controls. You could be the best pilot in the world. But I've put it in such a deep dive into such a tall mountain, right at the base of the mountain. I go, here, Jorge, you take this from here. It's not on my watch. Bye. What can you do? You can't pull that lever back enough to clear the mountain. You can't turn left fast enough. We're doing 700 kilometers an hour. It's already been destroyed. You're just waiting for the titles. The movie's over. You know, you're waiting for the titles and who gets the credits for doing it. And we're just going through the motions until the final and total catastrophic collapse of the currency system. Now, when you read that, you go, geez, Francis is just bad news. Black t-shirt, black pill, black everything. No, the thing about this is whatever goes down so hard and fast, somewhere else has got to reflate to replace the transaction system and the financial system. I'm here to take you off and out of the collapsing 9/11 Twin Towers and put you in a beautiful 5-suite hotel, 6-star with a beautiful private pool and everything. If you get off your backside and make the moves and make the change. If you don't, you're going to go down with the building and financially you will be wrecked and you'll be receiving UBI and it will be curtailed if you say the wrong things about who brought you here. That is it. I've literally explained this all in the Substack and you can come and join us in a live trading day. You can check out our YouTube channel. We are giving trades, crypto related for free. And if you want it earlier, you want it first, you want to understand all the analysis, and you want to learn a little bit, which means some personal growth and patience is required, you will learn, grow, and trade with us all as a community collective that have this perspective. That's when you book a call on themarketsniper.com. And that's me. I don't know if you've got any other questions for me.
No, that's about it. You've covered everything. I love those graphics. I saw them some weeks or months back through your Twitter feed or on your stuff, and I think you're spot on. You know, I think you and I both align on our assessment of where we are and unfortunately where we're going. And as you said, optionality. People need to internationalize, get multiple passports or residencies, as you mentioned, metals, land. You know, if they shut off your digital infrastructure, at least you have your own well with water and food. And I think network is also important, social network. So that's kind of what we're developing online, having a online sort of global network of people that you know and trust, but also in the analog physical world, you know, friends, family on the ground and all that. And so all of your links are in the description. And it was fantastic chatting with you, Francis. Thank you.
One more thing before I go, because I hate leaving people bummed. You were born to be in this era because you can cope and deal with it. You are a chosen one in your own way, like Matrix in the mirror. You can recognize that and recognize the attack vector and take up the challenge, which if you win in completing this obstacle course of events will be the greatest reward, because you don't get a big obstacle and a big downside event that you have to navigate without an equally big gain. Winning this game is like winning the World Cup. The World Series, if you're American, the World Cup football being Leo Messi. It's just bigger than most people can even see and understand. They don't realize they're in the game. They don't even realize where they're attacked. Just by watching this video, you are already in the top 5 or 10%. I want you in the top 1, 0.5. And let me tell you, taking action is absolute mental strength. I live with this knowledge and I'm a happy man. And every day what I'm doing, I'm communicating this, I'm supporting people, I'm building wealth, I'm actually earning, I'm living a great, great life. I'm extending my life. I have the luxury of being able to do health-based things and various things that put me in a great physical condition. You too can do this. But you're going to have to face up to the fact that there's an obstacle course. And this is the story of your life. You can choose to have an easy life and learn nothing. You can be a man of character who lives in tough and interesting times and be a winner. And that's a great challenge. Someone's just thrown down the gauntlet. Are you picking it up and good for the challenge? Or are you going to cry in the corner and say, don't play me, Francis, he upsets me? It's how you choose to react to this news that will determine the life and the outcome you have. You're at a fork right now. Which one are you taking? Blue pill, red pill, action, passivity, and fear. You can be the rabbit in the headlights with the big eyes, or you can hustle and you can come out like a king. So there's a massive opportunity. The Chinese symbol for crisis also is the symbol for opportunity. And with that gold moving east analogy, it's apt to finish on China with that comment. But the opportunity is as huge as the deflation of the old, all these big crises to the downside. But if you sit and do nothing and stay where you are, then you've been warned, and I'm the John the Baptist that came to tell you, and you didn't listen. If you act and you move and you get up and you drop what you're doing and you take action, there's your messianic hero. And it's not a politician shaking his fist that is going to be your messianic action. You are the custodian and the director of your own existence. It is not a politician. There's no Messiah coming to save you. And you will see this challenge and actually enjoy it while being a great support to other people. Be useful. That's it. Love you all. Thank you for watching me and putting up with me, coming at you on full rant out here in Miami, sweating like a dog, but really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast. The website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and I encourage you to sign up for the free email list that goes out with each podcast and every weekend with a collection of news headlines. The newsletter and website are our last lines of defense. We're being censored and deplatformed. It's nearly impossible to find Geopolitics and Empire on the Google search engine. We've been blacklisted. YouTube frequently takes down our videos with strikes. Facebook restricts our page. Reddit and Twitter take down posts. And after the Associated Press mentioned Geopolitics and Empire in a 2021 article co-written with NATO, our Patreon account was terminated. Vimeo also terminated our Pro account. The best free way to help Geopolitics and Empire is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere and subscribe to all of our media channels. You can find the video broadcast now on 5 platforms: Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, BitChute, and Brighteon. You can find the audio broadcast on the podcast ecosystem: SoundCloud, Apple, Spotify, and so on. My current favorite social media channels are Twitter and Telegram, but you can also find us on Gab, MeWe, Minds, Float, VK, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Finally, Geopolitics and Empire is in dire need of funding to continue. You can leave a donation, purchase a consultation with the host, or become a member to receive additional benefits. We also produce a weekly broadcast called Dissident Thinker for members and Rockfin subscribers only. We will continue to fight the good fight come hell or high water. Thank you for listening.